Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's financial education webinar on how to avoid lifestyle creep in the new year. My name is Vincent Delgado. I am the Education Outreach Manager here at Cesslock Credit Union. Before we dive into today's presentation, I do want to take care of a few housekeeping items. First and foremost, as you probably just heard, we are recording today's webinar. At the end of today's presentation, you should receive, well, I should say before the end of the day, you should receive a follow-up email from me with a link to the recording. So if for whatever reason you have to jump off early, or maybe you missed something, or you wanted to revisit something in the presentation, you will get a link to the recording of the presentation, including the question and answer portion, which we'll get to at the end. Or if you want to pass it along to someone who maybe wanted to attend but couldn't, you want to share with a coworker, colleague, family, friend, you name it, you will be, again, receiving a link to the recording of today's presentation. I mentioned questions. We'll definitely have some time for Q&A at the end. I envision the presentation will take anywhere from 25 to 30-ish minutes, which would leave us plenty of time to get to any questions. However, feel free to use it's either a question and answer link or a chat box. It may look different on your device, but feel free to use that throughout the presentation. If you have questions, if you're having maybe some tech issues, you name it, feel free to use that chat or dialogue box. I'll make sure I take a look at it throughout the presentation. And if it's a perfect time to stop and answer any questions, I'll make sure I do that. But again, I want to encourage some Q&A during this presentation if you do have things that do come up. There will be a poll that I'm going to administer here in 1 second. So that'll be another way for you to engage briefly here before we get started. Lastly, a little bit about Cesslock. We're the largest locally owned financial institution here in San Luis Obispo. We've been around for a little over 80 years. Our members are local. The money stays local. We're incredibly happy and proud to serve the Central Coast. We do offer these presentations monthly. So for some of you that have joined in the past or last year, awesome. Thank you. Thank you for coming back this year. Happy New Year, by the way. I think today, what are we, midpoint of January? Is today kind of the last day to say Happy New Year? Or are we done with that and we're leaving that behind as we approach the second half of January? But again, we do offer these presentations monthly. Sometimes we do presentations in person as well too. I think we're going to add a couple more presentations in person this year. We find that depending on the topic, it's probably a little bit better to have these conversations in person. So keep an eye out for those as well too. Also, we are starting to branch out for more presentations with local employers, community groups. So if you're involved or affiliated somehow with maybe an employer that wants to add financial education as part of your benefits, reach out, let me know. Again, my email address is there on the screen. But again, any and all opportunities we can to continue to expand the financial education reach in the Central Coast, we're going to make sure we do that. I did want to launch a little quick poll here before we get started. Let me see if this is going to work for us. 1 second. Yes, let's launch this right here. So quickly, if you could just let me know what topics you maybe want to learn a little bit more about here in 2025. We have a few different options here that you can select from. If there's something maybe not listed in the on the poll here, maybe just drop it in the chat box on what you want to hear about. All right, so we got some people talking, they want to hear about credit, you want to hear about retirement investing. Awesome. That will be something we definitely, I think in March or April, we're going to do a retirement and investing presentation. And that's one that's probably going to be in person as well too. You'll hear from Chris Datu for that presentation. It'll be him and myself. He's our wealth management guy here at Cesslock. He's incredibly knowledgeable on this specific topic. So we'll probably do something in person with him. And so for those that, like, if you want to attend an in-person presentation, what time frame works for you? Is it something we should do from 5 to 6 p.m., 5:30 to 6:30? Is it a midday, 12 to 1? If you can put in that chat box maybe a time frame that works for you as well too, that would be great. We want to make sure we have the ability to reach everyone. So if you can, at least at some point throughout the presentation, drop in that chat box what time frame you want to you'd be able to attend. That'd be great. Okay. I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll here. It seems like everybody participated. We had credit people. It looks like 25% of people wanted to hear about credit. 75% of people wanted to hear about retirement and investing. 50% of, or I should say, an additional 25% wanted to hear about debt. And then we had a small percentage chatting other. So please share those in the chat/Q&A box, and we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you so much for participating, everybody. Appreciate that. Let me see here. 12-1 seems to work great. Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Again, anything else that continues to come up, please share and use that question and answer option. Okay. Now that we got to take care of a few housekeeping items, let's dive right into our presentation here. What is lifestyle creep? So your lifestyle, as it relates to your finances, includes a few different things. What your day-to-day life looks like, the home that you live in, the food that you eat, the car you drive, the vacations that you take. When you experience lifestyle creep, the amount your lifestyle costs each month increases with your income. The cost of your lifestyle can creep up on you like the comparison I think was told to me once was like mold in the refrigerator. You don't notice it until one day you kind of open up maybe something that's a little too old, whether that's yogurt or whatever, and bam, you see some of that mold that's been festering in there. And the impact is clear and it's not very pleasant. And this is a great time to be having that conversation, right? Because a lot of companies are going through performance reviews, and you're going to see some salary increases start to take effect. Maybe you'll see some promotions this time of year. So your income is going to be increasing. Your salary is going to be increasing. This time of year, bonuses, maybe they've already been distributed or they're about to be distributed. So you may be getting a decent little sum in the form of a bonus. Tax return season is coming very quickly. So you may be seeing a maybe larger than you expected tax return or any tax return for that amount. So it's really when you start to see some increase or an influx of money and determining what we want to do with that money, making it work for us. And lifestyle creep is caused when we begin to factor in all of those increase in funds that we're getting. You begin to question, when did you decide to join all of these, monthly subscription services, or maybe the online shopping has started to increase a little bit in terms of frequency. Instead of, making maybe some of our meals at home like we were consistently, we're now ordering out a little bit more. We're getting sushi delivered a little bit more. And unfortunately, when it gets out of hand, lifestyle creep can mean having less money for your emergency savings. It can mean having less money that's given to your retirement. It can mean less money that's being used to pay down debt. Even if you have a generous income, a very good income, you still may end up living paycheck to paycheck and incurring some overwhelming debt. So lifestyle creep isn't something that, because you make a decent sum of money, means that you're immune to it. That's not the case at all. Regardless of what your salary is, all of us can fall victim to some style of lifestyle creep. A few signs, I gave a few examples of it, but a few signs that you may be experiencing lifestyle creep. Maybe it's the things that you used to think of as aspirational or luxury spending, such as the car or the newest iPhone every time it's released, now feel like necessities. You kind of feel like you have to have them. Maybe there's less money in your bank account at the end of every single month, and you don't have a clear idea of where it went. You check right before pay period, and you're like, why is it a little bit lower than it's been? Or you don't like the number that's sitting there at the end of the month in your bank account. Maybe you're more comfortable with increased day-to-day expenses like daily takeout lunches, higher grocery bills, from a premium supermarket. I think we all know the name of one, but we're going to leave it out. And maybe the idea of going back to the way you previously lived in order to save money seems like maybe something of a difficult task. So these are maybe a few examples. If it's maybe hitting a nerve with you, if you're saying, hey, that might be me, this might be a sample or a sign of some lifestyle creep. there's a graphic I definitely wanted to share that kind of encompasses what we're really talking about here. You get a raise, and so you tend to tell yourself or justify that increase in spending of money, or you begin to do it without recognizing it. And your solution, maybe if you do recognizing it, is I'll work harder. I'll get better commissions to supplement that increase in spending. I'll work harder so that I get a promotion. I'll find a side gig. You name it, you'll justify it. And then you just repeat that cycle. So you get the raise and it just goes up, so on and so forth. And this is kind of just, again, a graphic to really encompass and summarize what that lifestyle creep does look like. And so let me just preface, right? Like, it's normal for lifestyle spending to increase when you do get a higher income. Maybe you want to treat yourself. And I think that there's a time and a place where, purchasing the newer vehicle or, purchasing some newer clothes or adjusting some of your spending habits is justified, especially if it still fits within your budget and you have the means to be able to continue to pay for the things that you want to pay for and accomplish some of your financial goals. But that's not the case for everyone as it relates to lifestyle creep. Around half of US workers claim that debt payments stop them from saving enough for retirement. And, not all debt is due to lifestyle creep, of course. But additional spending for unnecessary purchases is again kind of the likely culprit, or lifestyle creep is kind of that likely culprit, right? And as I mentioned, it can happen to anyone. It can affect everyday earners as much as it can affect, kind of some affluent households. So it's really, really important, to keep this lifestyle spending under control, right? So how do we avoid lifestyle creep? The goal isn't to deprive you of nice things. That's not the goal of this presentation, and not the goal of warning you about lifestyle creep. It's really to ensure that you're setting aside enough money for some of your short and long-term financial goals. As with a lot of things, that if you've attended presentations in the past, as with a lot of things, whether we talk about budgeting, whether we talk about our habit-based spending and whatnot, it's not to get you not to buy things and say you shouldn't buy X, Y, or Z item. It's really to get you to look at kind of what you're doing with your money now, and does it align with your financial goals? Whatever that might be. If it's buying a home, if it's saving for retirement, if it's decreasing debt, if it's funding your kids' college education, you name it. It's really to get you to look at where your money's going and make the right choices that align with your goals. One last thing I at least wanted to cover here, and I'm going to share a quick little video, and then we'll dive into some ways that we can prevent the lifestyle creep. So let's say, for example, you're someone on the call here. We're here in California. Let's say you are earning $60,000 a year. And this last performance review that happened before the end of the year, your boss said, hey, we're going to give you a $10,000 raise. So you're now up to $70,000 a year. After, taxes and everything have accounted for that, your take home is only about $520. I shouldn't say only. Your take home is $520 more per month. We know that obviously with taxes and everything that you're not getting that full $10,000 on your paycheck. And many folks see that they're getting that $520 more a month, and they justify some of their purchases or their increased spending. When realistically, if maybe you're a person in this situation, you should begin to ask yourself, what are some of my financial goals that I can utilize that $520 towards? Are you maybe struggling with a little bit more credit card debt than you'd like? That's a great way to utilize that increased income per month. Instead of justifying getting a new car because you want to treat yourself and you now have more flexibility with a monthly payment on a vehicle, let's identify some of our revolving credit card debt or other debt that we have. Do you want to invest more in your retirement? Are you an individual who is looking at some of your retirement accounts, or maybe you have a 401k, but you don't have an IRA, and you want to diversify some of your retirement savings, or you're worried, maybe you're in your 40s, right? And you're like, I'm looking at my retirement accounts and I just don't know if 20 or 30 years from now, I'm going to have enough to save. That $520 more a month can help you accomplish some of those goals. If you're looking to make a bigger purchase, maybe you're looking to purchase a home and you've started to save, but it's just been so tough because housing prices here are astronomically high. I'm not saying that $520 every single month is going to be the make or break to purchasing that home, but it's a start, right? It's progress. Maybe you're looking to purchase a new vehicle, because you have one now, but it's a little old and it's only a matter of time before it kind of poops out on you. So these are some of the things that, instead of justifying an increase in spending, an increase in some of our normal month-to-month spending, we can really focus that money towards something a little bit more valuable to our goals. And I want to share this quick video here that just kind of summarizes it a little bit more, some of what we've talked about the last couple slides.
If I just make more money, then my life problems will be solved. Or, you know what? I do well, Rachel. I'm fine. I can out earn my stupidity and my spending habits. But lifestyle creep is real. What happens is you make more and you just spend more. So you don't actually get any closer to reaching your goals, paying off debt, investing for the future. So that's where a budget's so important. Even if you get a bonus or a raise, what are you doing with that?
And so that's really the big focus here over the course of the next, 5-ish slides. We've got or are expecting a little bit of an increase in income. We're getting that nice bonus. We are, getting a nice tax return, or you name it. Maybe your spouse is someone that's getting an increase in salary, right? Using me as a personal example, my wife is as well too. She just had her performance review. She's going to get a nice little salary bump, and we kind of, it's funny because I told her today I was going to be conducting this presentation. I told her last night, and that kind of spiraled into the conversation of, all right, you're getting a little bit of an increase in salary. What are we going to do? What do we want to accomplish in the next couple of years? Or the next year? How do we want to allocate those funds appropriately to make sure that we're setting ourselves up for success? So keep in mind that whatever I share here over the next 4-ish slides are things that I'm implementing at my house as well too. And conversations that I'm having, with my wife to make sure that I'm getting the best out of, the slight increase that we're getting in pay. So, budgeting really is kind of one of the biggest things, and it was mentioned in that video on the last slide. And I'm not going to bore you with, the ins and outs of creating the budget. If you want to learn more, again, let me know. Shoot me an email, and I'm happy to have those conversations. But I think the biggest thing is really to know where your money is going and track that spending. That's the best part about creating a budget. It's one of the best ways to prevent lifestyle creep as you earn more money. Maybe you have a budget now, or you follow a spending plan now. But again, the biggest thing you want to do is put yourself in a situation where you're able to see where your money is going and track that spending. Oftentimes, seeing where your money is going month to month, week to week, day to day is the motivation enough to make changes. There are a variety of budgets that are out there, budget styles or templates that are out there. But the key is finding one that fits your lifestyle. It fits your money habits. It fits your financial journey. Every single one of us is different. The budget that's going to work for me with, a spouse that works as well too, and having a almost 3-year-old in the house is going to be completely different than, the budget that works for you on the call that are maybe in your early 50s, still working and maybe thinking towards retirement with an empty nest. Like, we're going to have different budgets and different templates. But the goal really is to figure out where our money's going. Is it accomplishing our goals? And if it's not, how can we allocate that money differently? Keeping in mind that creating a budget, figuring out what your income is and seeing where your money's going doesn't mean you have to drastically limit your spending. As I've mentioned 1,000 times, it's really just about figuring out where your money's going and matching it up to some of your long-term goals. The great thing now about budgeting. I remember my mom teaching me about budgeting when I was a kid, and this is as she was filling out her checkbook. That made things a lot more difficult. Nowadays, if you open up your banking app, whether you're, with Cesslock or another financial institution, you can kind of see where your money's going, especially with, we're going towards this more and more cashless life that we live. You can see where your money's going. It's very, very easy to pull up that Excel spreadsheet. I'm telling you what I do. It's very easy to pull up the Excel spreadsheet and type in really quickly, this is what we pay for our mortgage. This is what we pay in car payments. This is what we pay for daycare. This is what we pay for groceries, because we can kind of see where it's going. And again, continuing to use me as an example, when we look at our budget, the biggest thing that really bleeds our budget is that food. What are we spending when we go out to eat? What are we spending on quick lunches? What are we spending on coffee? That's the biggest thing that when we look at our budget from a bird's eye view in that Excel spreadsheet, that money that's going towards food and some of that discretionary spending is oftentimes where we're all going to see an opportunity to make a big change. And that's why I love the budget, because you can see where that money's going. You can see, man, you mean to tell me I spent, I don't know, insert amount, $400 on takeout or food in the month of December? Like, and that's not hard to do. We go out to eat for the three of us, and it's very quickly between two entrees, a kid's meal, maybe you get a beer or a glass of wine. Like, you're looking at $80 or $90 out the door, tip included. Like, all you need to do is go out to eat 3 or 4 times a month, and you're at that $400. So it's really looking at those things and figuring out, okay, can we cut back on that once or twice a month and allocate that $200 towards something different? And lifestyle creep, you tend to justify going out to eat a little bit more because you think you can afford it. Then it gets into that regular habit of doing it. And that's when you get into some trouble and you're not accomplishing your goals. So budgeting, especially looking at where the money's going, is a huge, huge way to prevent some of that lifestyle creep. Let's transition in over here into paying yourself first. This is one of my absolute favorite kind of financial concepts. You get an increase in your pay, you get a bonus, you get a good commission check to end the year, you get that tax return. Saving money or putting some of that money into savings is one of the best things you can do for yourself. You know, whether you're putting it into a savings account, into a retirement account, investing it, whatever, making regular payments towards yourself can help prevent lifestyle creep. Paying yourself first is the principle that says you should contribute to saving for your goals before you spend all your money on bills and discretionary spending. A lot of us use this strategy as part of an overall budgeting plan, and you can simply do it by just setting aside a few dollars every single time you get paid. Without the commitment of paying yourself first, it's easy to pay yourself last or not at all. This graphic on the right kind of really shows what this concept usually looks like. We get paid. Hypothetically, let's say you get paid Friday. You have all of your bills that come out during, maybe that specific time of the month. And then you spend whatever it is in the 2 weeks before your next pay period, some of your discretionary spending. Thursday rolls around, you're like, hey, it's payday. I get paid tomorrow. And you think, should I transfer some of that money over to savings? No, I don't. I want to keep a little bit of a cushion in there, and I'm going to get paid tomorrow. And then you just start that cycle all over again. That's why there's that maybe in there. The alternative, paying yourself first, really flips that temptation to forego saving till the end and doing it the second you get paid. This is how it works. You get paid, you allocate X amount of money into your savings account. And I'll share an example next that it doesn't really matter what savings account, but allocate money into a savings account. The first time you get paid, just set up that automatic transfer, quickly transfer it yourself. You can even go to your HR, fill out a new direct deposit form and put, 3% of your paycheck into a savings account, 2%, you name it, straight into your savings account, and the rest will go into your checking. Then you pay your bills. then you have your discretionary spending money. It makes a world of a difference, and it allows you, it takes the power out of your hands and just does it automatically for you. It really removes that temptation to forego savings. Once you set it up automatically for yourself, it's going to be great for you to take a look at that savings account and see it continue to grow. And you can use that money towards whatever financial goals that you want. But having that savings account, whether it's for an emergency savings fund, whether it's for a vacation you want to take in a year, whether it's for your kids' college fund, you name it, having that cushion continue to grow because you're allocating money to yourself is going to be it's going to be one of the best feelings. And again, there's really no wrong answer where you can put that money. It can go into a variety of different savings accounts. You can put it into your basic savings account. It's not going to earn a ton of interest, but if you need an emergency fund or a cushion, just throw it into your basics, your basic savings account. You can put it into a high yield savings account. I'm going to give an example of what a high yield savings account will do over a long period of time, putting money in there. You can put it in that. High yield savings accounts, rates are anywhere from like 3.5% to 4% right now, depending on the financial institution. You can allocate more money into your retirement savings account. So you know how, maybe some of us have 401k contributions, bump that percentage up. Maybe you're at 5%, bump it up to 6 or to 7. You can put it into a college fund. You can put it into a CD. Again, as long as you're saving those funds, you get the point. And not justifying excess spending on going out to eat and all this other stuff. As long as you're allocating it toward a savings account, you're doing it the right way. So here's an example. This is for a high yield savings account. Let's say that the interest rate is 4%, which is, again, pretty common for a lot of high yield savings accounts right now. Just a quick glance at what's out there. Let's say you started, your initial deposit was $250 into a high yield savings account that had 4%. And every single month you transfer $50. Remember, you're the person that's making $60,000 a year. You got a $10,000 increase to $70,000 a year. Your take home pay is about $520 more a month. Look at how much more. Look at how much $50, putting it away over, let's say, a 10-year period nets you $7,700, right? You gained $1,400 alone. You contributed $6,000, but you got $1,400 in interest. That money can be used for who knows what, right? Again, that's over a 10-year period, of course. These calculators are awesome, by the way. You can do it over the course of 1 year. You can do it over the course of 10 years, 5 years, 15 years. Like I would love to be able to start doing this, and in 10 years, $7,000, that's going to pay for a nice vacation for the family and I, right? It's just an example of what you can do by putting some money away and letting it gain interest over the course of a 10-year period. Again, and this all goes back to you're getting a little bit of increase in money. Don't worry about going out to eat more and justifying that lifestyle spending when you can throw that money into a savings account and be able to plan for emergencies, go take a vacation, make a big purchase, not have to worry about putting it on a credit card. All right, let's talk about arguably maybe the biggest adjustment that is needed when it comes to avoiding that lifestyle creep. I can preach until I'm blue in the face about budgeting. I can preach until I'm blue in the face about saving. And for some of you, it's going to resonate, and for others, it's not. What you really need to take on is the psychological shift that comes with your spending and an increase in money that you get every single month. This involves changing the way we think and our approach to finances, especially when it comes to how we allocate our money. Most of what I've shared, whether it's the budgeting or pay yourself first, has revolved around having a more thoughtful and intentional and like long-term view or perspective rather than, the immediate gratification of that impulse spending. Oftentimes we really need to work on prioritizing needs over wants. And this really evolves, again, around that psychological shift with how we handle money, reevaluating what is truly necessary while, desires and luxury items are appealing, distinguishing between, the wants and needs of essential items, like food and shelter and healthcare versus designer clothes and gadgets and things of that nature, really helps us prioritize our spending. And so oftentimes it involves us needing to, focus on, a long-term satisfaction and avoid those impulse purchases just because we've increased our income a little bit. Recognizing, maybe when our emotions are taking over our purchases, or recognizing when, marketing strategies are influencing our decision making as it relates to purchases. That's really what's going to help us prevent that lifestyle creep and increased spending. Similarly, let's adopt a little bit of a delayed gratification approach, shifting our mindset from immediate satisfaction to long-term rewards can help with that increase in spending. Usually this involves around us, let's say, waiting to buy something, right? Waiting before we buy it or purchase an item. This delay helps us eliminate unnecessary purchases and fosters appreciation for kind of that value of money. And the delayed gratification approach, I think, really works with saving money. Obviously, when you save money, there's no instant gratification that spending money gives you. However, I mentioned speaking from experience, from someone who maybe 10 or 15 years ago didn't really prioritize savings, to now having some money in a savings account for an emergency. That's my gratification now, knowing that if an emergency does happen, there's money set aside. If there's an unexpected bill that pops up, there's money set aside to be able to bridge that gap, not have to throw it on a credit card. That is now a new sense of gratification that I have, and it's taken some time to work on that, but I think it really does make a huge impact. Lastly, reframing money as a tool. Shift your thinking to see money as a tool for achieving your life goals, rather than just money being something that allows you to buy things. This perspective really encourages thoughtful and purposeful and maybe intentional spending that aligns with your values. I really like this frame of mind, using money as a tool to accomplish some of the goals that we want, not using money as a living for the paycheck and blowing it on things that are kind of unnecessary. I really love that mindset shift. I think it makes a huge impact. As we close out the last few slides here, one other thing that I definitely want to talk about is that keeping up with the Joneses. I know I heard it a lot as a kid growing up, and I think the saying is still relevant. And the funny thing is even more so for this younger generation, they may not know what keeping up with the Joneses is, but they're going to fall more victim to it than we are because of the pressures of social media and even the reality TV that we watch every day. And so, when it comes to folks taking on more money and getting an increase in pay and whatnot, we tend to spend more on the things like what we wear, the car we drive, the house we own. And a lot of times we do this because of the pressure from friends, family, neighbors, you name it. We justify the spending in the early stages because, we tell ourselves we're making enough to cover those increased costs, right? Again, that's just a prime example of keeping up with the Joneses. Keeping up with the Joneses used to be just your neighbor or your friend circle, but again, and it used to be a saying maybe the older generation only mentioned, but now it's that social media, it's the shows that we watch, it's the influencers telling us we need this or you have to have this, and so now it's more prevalent and dangerous, to be honest with you, than ever. This urge keeps you to continue to spend money, and it can cause a difficult financial situation. It can cause you going paycheck to paycheck, regardless of how much money you make, regardless of how wealthy or affluent you are. It's important to stick to your own financial plan, making sure that you're sticking to your budget, not your neighbor's budget, not your friend's budget, not the person that you follow on social media's budget. And again, I emphasize this at the very beginning. it doesn't mean that you can't buy nice things for yourself. That's not at all what I've said. It's being intentional with your spending. If you wanted to buy those nice pair of shoes, great, you can do that. But continuously justifying purchasing those nice pair of shoes every couple of months just because you've made more money is the thing we want to avoid. If you want to continue to justify buying those nice pair of shoes, but the debt is increasing and the savings account is still at a zero, again, that's when maybe we want to reevaluate some of those purchases. So we got a comment here. Let's see. Something that has helped me, buying better quality things rather than buying lesser quality and needing to buy again when they break. It saves money in the long term. Yeah, so that's a good way about being a little bit more intentional with how we use our money, right? You know, you've recognized that instead of justifying, let's say, I don't know, whether it's tires or whether it's a new digital equipment, something electronics wise, you know, you buy something that's a little bit more pricier, being intentional because you know that it's going to last a little bit longer. That's a great example about with being a little bit more intentional with your money and using it a little bit more correctly. That's great. Thanks for sharing. So as we kind of close out our presentation here, you know, I wanted to make sure I shared that, you know, the bottom line really, lifestyle creep doesn't have to be dramatic for it to have an impact on your financial life. You know, take a closer look at your spending and calculate how much additional money you are earning and make a deliberate plan for that. You know, you'll feel both proud and the accomplishments that you got the additional income and how you're putting that money to use. Again, I want to emphasize the goal wasn't for me to lecture you on your purchases, but rather just make you a little bit more aware. Oops, sorry. But rather just make you a little bit more aware of kind of where your money is going. Again, if you've ever attended presentations of mine in the past, you'll see that that's kind of a theme of mine. It's not to shame you. It's not to tell you what to buy, what not to buy. It's especially as it relates to kind of budgeting and spending habits and things like that. It's just to get us a little bit more aware. And the more that you're aware, you can make that choice of, is this spending aligning with my goals and what I want to accomplish? If it's not, you know, I need to make some changes. So maybe ask yourself, you know, some of those questions as you begin to reevaluate where that money is going. Now we have an opportunity for some questions. If anybody does have any, I want to emphasize it doesn't have to be about this presentation. If you have some questions about accounts or you name it, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box. Now's the opportunity for us to, or the time for us to kind of answer some of those questions. I did want to share a great resource that's eligible for some CESLOC members and non-members as well too. We have a great partnership. We have a great partnership with a third-party company called GreenPath Financial Wellness. Maybe you're struggling with, you know, debt repayment and you want to get on a debt management plan. GreenPath is there to help you. Maybe you have some, you know, further questions around other financial topics. GreenPath is there for you. We work jointly with them. They help create a lot of these financial wellness presentations. They have some of their own content as well too. They do some of their own presentations. So again, they're really a great resource. We work kind of hand in hand with GreenPath. If you don't want to call them, you can just, again, quickly Google GreenPath, or CESLOC's website will guide you to GreenPath as well too. Again, as questions start coming in, I want to make sure I say thank you for joining. Let's see here. Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm going to keep up slide here and again allow for any and all questions that do come up. I appreciate all of you joining. Again, we've got a couple of other presentations already scheduled. So in February, we're going to be doing the psychology of spending. So we'll talk similar to some of the things that we shared here. We're going to dive a little bit deeper though, and talk more about how, you know, marketing and advertising has played a role in what we purchased. We'll talk a little bit more about, again, keeping up with the Joneses. We'll talk about examining some of our habit-based spending, how we frequently just get into habits and we don't recognize it, and that can increase our spending. So we got a question here about improving credit. I'm trying to get my credit up or increased. Any tips? So there's a few different things. Oftentimes what we see is, credit has been damaged because of a few different reasons. But one of the biggest important things is maybe the balances that you're carrying. All of this, no one can see your answers, or your questions. So what you're typing to me is anonymous, but maybe you're carrying some high credit card balances, and that's bringing your score down. So the biggest thing you want to do is begin to allocate more funds towards decreasing your overall credit balances. I do have a presentation on, improving our credit score and decreasing debt. And maybe that's something we present in March, because it seemed like there was a few people that had some questions on that. But, a big thing is again, just making sure you're decreasing your overall balances that you're carrying on your credit cards. Take a look at your budgeting. Where's your money going? Decrease some of that discretionary spending and allocate more towards your credit card balances. Another thing is making sure your payments are on time every single time. Late payments can really, really hinder your overall credit score. So maybe you already have some late payments on your record. You really can't do anything about that right now. Okay, so let's see. Your credit, okay. Yeah, so just a quick answer, it's going to be decreasing. It's going to be decreasing that credit card debt, as I mentioned. So a few different options. Take a look at where your money's going right now. If you're spending a little too much in discretionary spending, really, really reevaluate where that money is going and allocating it towards some of that credit card debt. One thing you may want to look at is a balance transfer card. So if you have a high amount of money in credit card debt and you have high interest rates, you're paying a ton of money in interest. And that's really what keeps you in that revolving quicksand of paying credit card debt. Take a look at a balance transfer card. You can move money over to a new credit card and you get upwards to 2 years of 0% interest, allowing you to really chip away at that credit card debt without having to worry about interest. You do have to pay a minimal fee for a balance transfer. But again, understanding that you'll get anywhere from 1.5 to 2 years without having to pay interest. So a quick Google search of balance transfer cards and it'll share which financial institution is offering what. And that may be a good option for you. But again, really examining where some of our money, it's good that you don't have a car payment, because again, you now have more freedom to tackle some of that credit card debt. At the end of the day, that's really what it boils down to. I don't know what your savings account situation looks like. If you have an emergency savings account built up, I want to discourage you from tapping into that, because you want to make sure you have enough money to cover any type of emergency that you have coming up. However, you may want to examine, how much your debt is costing you and pulling some money from a savings account to lower that amount. Okay, so you put money, that $500 a month, you're putting that into an emergency savings fund or into a savings account? Every 2 weeks, $500 every 2 weeks. Wow, that's great. And that's going in. Okay. I mean, you're saving a ton. You may want to really re-examine that $500 a month or $500 every 2 weeks into a savings account. You may want to reallocate that towards decreasing that debt, because if you have an emergency savings fund built up and you're prepared to withstand a potential emergency, the debt is going to cost you more money in the long run. So you may want to explore allocating some of that $500 every 2 weeks. Maybe half of it is going to decreasing that debt. Because again, that $12,000 paying 25, 29% interest is going to cost you a lot of money. So I'd really figure out if transferring or allocating some of that money that you put aside every 2 weeks towards your debt. I think it's going to make a huge, huge difference. And once you see that number at a reasonable amount, then you can maybe revisit how much you're. Oops, hold on. 1 second here, sorry. There we go. I don't know why I got here. Let me just bring up my, sorry. Anyways, yeah, yeah. So I'd really examine that money that you're putting aside every 2 weeks, if that's better off being allocated towards that credit card debt. And then again, explore some of your discretionary funding, where it's going. Are we eating out a lot? Are we going out a lot? Where that money is being allocated towards. And then third, I would also explore a balance transfer card option. You'll get 0% interest for a 1.5 to 2 years, and it's going to really ease the burden of that interest, high interest that you might be paying. And as you begin to chip away at that overall balance, you should see that score increase, because that's what impacts your score as well too, the amount of money you're carrying on your balances. Because it wasn't like you have any late payments. That's not really the issue. It's really your balances, how much money you're carrying over, is really going to impact your score. If you want to chat more, I'm happy to. You can send me an email at the screen right here on the screen, vdelgado@ceslock.org. And again, I'm happy to share with you some other options that might be available or answer any other questions that you have. But again, it seems like the biggest thing is just decreasing that balance. Great question though. In March, I'll probably do a kind of understanding your credit scores, how to access your credit report, and then talk a little bit more about debt, because you're not alone. You're not alone at all. So that might be a presentation that I take on in March, and folks can attend that as well too. I envision having a lot of questions around that. Again, if you feel I didn't maybe answer your question enough, or you want to chat further, my email address is right there. Feel free to shoot me an email. Any other questions here, folks? We've still got time, so again, I don't mind sticking around for a little bit. And I know we still have some people on the call, so for those that are jumping off or leaving, thank you so much for joining. I greatly appreciate it. But I'll hang out for another minute or two. All righty, folks. Again, thank you so much for joining. Really appreciate it. You all were a great audience. Keep an eye out for presentations in the coming months. Next month, psychology of spending. March, it looks like we'll do something around debt or credit. And then in April, I think is when we'll do that, investments and retirements. So keep an eye out on your emails from Ceslock. Frequently visit our social media or take a look at our newsletter to see when those dates are, and make sure you register for them. Again, any questions in between now and the next webinar, again, don't hesitate to reach out. And I hope to see you all at our next webinar next month. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you, everybody.